For many people, owning their own home is a big life dream. But for some families in the UK, this is turning into a real nightmare. This is Libertarian View, your source of decentralized and distributed information. This article was suggested and written by R2L2, revised and narrated by J.J. Liebert. Who has never thought of having their own house, tidying everything up the way they want and having a little peace in their little palace? Or even, who got a mortgage to have a house for the family, who was very happy for having just paid? So all of this has been a big problem for thousands of UK families who are suffering from government-imposed rule changes. The story begins on June 14, 2017, when a huge fire broke out in the building known as the Grenfell Tower, a residential building in London, in which more than 72 residents lost their lives. The accident investigation concluded that a polyethylene-based coating put in place in 2015 may have been the biggest enabler of the fire's rapid and ferocious spread, including affecting the effectiveness of firefighters' work. Polyethylene is a family of very simple and inexpensive plastics, present in our daily lives, from market bags and detergent packages to ballistic plates for vehicle vests and armor. However, despite its versatility, this polymer does not behave well at high temperatures, with conservative numbers pointing to a melting temperature of less than 302 Fahrenheit. This is very low compared to temperatures often above the 11-12 Fahrenheit that building fires can reach in ways that affect even the concrete structure. This is confirmed because, as in the United States, any building fire will require an inspection and reports from engineers attesting that the base structures were not affected. We also need to note that this coating was already banned in some countries. It can only be used in very few exceptions, but none of them in a building like this. In 2014, there was a similar fire in Australia and 3 more in Dubai, all with evidence that this coating had fueled the fire. And it was because of this unfortunate fact that a major check was initiated by the City of London Fire Department to see if other buildings would pass the security tests. And, unfortunately, the answer is no. With hundreds of buildings being inspected each day, many of them were found to use these panels, now considered dangerous. New regulations issued by the government have completely changed what is considered safe, causing many buildings built until recently to end up being classified as dangerous. It's as if, overnight, these families discover that they live in a box of matches that could completely catch fire at any time. To reverse this situation, the tenants would need to pay for a renovation of the building, replacing the entire polyethylene coating for a more fire-resistant one. Not only that, they took the opportunity to push other things down their throats, like installing detectors and alarms, fire doors and other little things. And even elements with wood, or some porches, may need to be changed, or rather, that require changing. Little things have costs ranging from £12,000 to over £70,000 per apartment, in some cases. The question is, who is going to pay this bill? There is a big fight between the residents, the construction companies, and the government, in which none of them think it is fair to pay for the renovation. On the part of the unit owners, it is noticed that it is a very high amount, especially when compared to the price of the apartment. Builders say they have always done everything right, everything within technical specifications. And the government says that this is not her responsibility. After all, why would he pay for a problem of his own making? The truth is that he is the biggest culprit in this situation, as he did not know how dangerous the material was and now uses all his power to demand that adjustments be made. Pay the bill? Of course not. It is best to let people pay and only enter money through taxes on services and materials purchased, of course. Look how nice I am, I'll give you some time to get right, says the great politician. And before you can outline any reaction, he adds, but we can't leave it the way it is, for your safety and comfort, someone will have to keep an eye on it if there's no fire. And, thus, alarm patrols were created, people with yellow vests, radios, flashlights and, amazingly, megaphones to wake up residents in the event of a fire. Will the government pay for it? Of course not. Construction companies? Even less. So, who? Well, you got it right. Themselves, the residents. Let them bear the costs of these authoritarian measures and ridiculous ones that only serve to sugarcoat. As always, the government giving alternative ways to solve the problems it created. To minimize expenses, many residents volunteered to participate in these rounds, so that it would not be necessary to hire more people. After all, the buildings weren't the residences of millionaires who wouldn't mind paying £300 a month to a specialized brigade. If we consider that more than 400 buildings in London needed to hire this service, imagine how much tax was collected with this. But calm down, we're not over yet. There is still another problem. Do you know when you drive a car that is much appreciated by criminals, and the insurance company charges you a higher amount because of the risk? So, something similar is happening. Insurers have increased policy values 5 to 20 times for these buildings, as the risk of nothing would have become much greater than before. The fact is that, in one way or another, the expenses to have an apartment increased absurdly. Banks are refusing to offer home loans without the EWS1. This EWS1 is an external wall certificate, which guarantees the safety of the coatings used. In other words, there is nowhere to run. Nobody can even sell the apartments. Another point that makes it very difficult is the way in which the property system works in the United Kingdom, in which some natural or legal person is the owner of the land and buildings, called a freeholder. On the other hand, whoever buys the apartment itself is the leaseholder, who cannot even have pets without authorization. Well, clearly, you can see the big stupidity of the state in deciding, all of a sudden, that everything needs to change and that it is 100% mandatory. Only then do we see who is the biggest culprit in the confusion and who is putting pressure on property values to go to zero, without giving residents alternatives to leave it with someone else who wants to buy. Now, if the apartment is unsafe, it is up to the seller to inform the buyer of this problem and he decides whether to buy or not. He weighs the risks according to his own needs. What the state did not solve the problem for the residents, it did not make housing safer. What was done only made many people's homes a real hell, on the one hand the risk of fire, on the other hand, exorbitant expenses and property devaluation. On the issue of construction companies, we must take as a basis their lack of knowledge about the problem of being flammable panels. After all, if the state that controls everything says it is safe and the use is completely legal, they don't need to look for more information. This would be easily resolved in a world of decentralized information, as the best information on the cost and benefit of components and technologies used would be sought globally. A great example of this is the ISO standards, recognized worldwide, that guarantee high standards of quality in management techniques, which have been widely applied for years. They are not mandatory for any company, but certainly the one that has this certification differentiates itself in the market, especially for those seeking security and reliability. In the case of these panels, a council debated the standards to be achieved would fulfill the function well, since it would be optional for companies to adhere to them and for consumers to accept the products that are most convenient for them. About the banks, the same thing. If they don't want to accept financing houses without certain standards, it's their right. After all, the risk is theirs. However, norms should not be subordinated to the state, but to private organizations that can bring into play which parameters they studied and decided to be important. But what matters is what is in the contract. This and other fire cases that led to the need for a renovation should make it clear which situations will be covered by each of the parties. And a good contract and good market relations are good even when other parties enter the game, as is the case with insurance companies. They have no interest in compensating people for fire and other accidents. As a result, they will be able to participate in organizations that will create standards and have a voice in raising building safety levels. And of all history, the most important thing is to see how the state disrupts the market and people's lives. The greater the state interventionism, the less advances humanity will have. Thank you for your audience. If you liked this video, please hit the thumbs up icon below and share the video in your social network. If you want to be notified of other videos, hit subscribe and then the bell icon. See you soon.